In the Oscars, and Eddie George.
You remember what life was like during Prohibition? Well, neither do I. Few of us were alive then. But during Prohibition, the only way you could get a drink in America was to break the law. You might go to a place that looked like this. Appears to be a hot dog joint. But for those of us in the know, we'd walk over here to what looks like a regular phone booth, go in, pick up the little phone, call in. This is John Stossel. You expecting me?
Hi, welcome to pt.1.
Thank you very much. Most speakeasies, instead of a telephone, had a peephole or a secret password you'd give to the bartender to get in. And simply by buying a drink, I and the guys who sold it to me became criminals.
It was Prohibition that created the crime depicted in movies like The Untouchables. The booze dealers armed themselves, killed people, and didn't pay taxes. They corrupted cops. In fact, they became what we now call organized crime, the mob.
I want them dead.
Today they've given up on banning booze, but now we have new prohibitions.
Nation's crack epidemic.
Prohibitions against drugs.
A drug that can kill you the first time you take it. OxyContin is more addictive than heroin.
Serious, it's epidemic proportion.
Probably the worst drug that's out there right now.
Against selling a kidney.
Lee Cressetta has admitted that he was part of a scheme to steal body parts from corpses.
Having more than one spouse.
This is a slippery slope.
Against selling sex.
At one point, this was somebody's little girl who's now prostituting herself out.
But do these prohibitions make us safer or less safe? They certainly make us less free.
I had 7 cop cars come to my house at 10 till 6 in the morning to arrest me and take me to jail.
And now, the man who shatters conventional wisdom, John Stossel.
Today, looking back on alcohol prohibition, everyone agrees it was a disaster. It didn't stop people from drinking, but it created crime. People understand that now, but they say that other current prohibitions against drugs, prostitution, and so forth are different. Drugs, people say, are much more dangerous than alcohol. Prostitution, polygamy, and drug use all degrade our culture and send the wrong message to young people. But is that true? Or is most everything you think you know wrong? Let's start with drugs.
It is true that drug use has wrecked many people's lives.
Don't let drugs get in the way of your dreams.
But Prohibition activists made similar claims about alcohol. This engraving described the drunkard's progress. It all starts with a glass with a friend. Soon it becomes a glass too much with your jolly companions. That leads to poverty, disease, desperation, and crime. And finally, death by suicide. It's pretty similar to today's anti-drug ads.
This is your brain. This is heroin. This is what happens to your brain after snorting heroin. And this is what your body goes through. It's not over yet. This is what your family goes through. And your friends and your money. Any questions?
They say drugs are more addictive than alcohol.
Marijuana is an intoxicating, mind-muddling drug. Its use can lead to abnormal behavior, to psychological dependence.
And the newest drugs are the worst ever.
Worst drug that's out there right now.
They said I wouldn't get hooked after the first hit.
Scary. But is what they say true?
We're also seeing a lot of kids literally die from it, overheating, impact on kidneys, heart tissue, etc. We're also, we think, down the line going to see a tremendous spin-off in young women who are vulnerable to sexual assault.
That was General Barry McCaffrey, then the drug czar, talking about ecstasy. But as ecstasy got popular, there was no increase in sexual assault, so I have to wonder about some of these warnings. I also wonder, because I read the book Saying Yes by Jacob Sullum. The yes refers to drug use, not abuse, use. Jacob Sullum joins us now. You say much of what we're told about drugs is just wrong?
Yeah, that's in a nutshell. I think the concerns that you heard raised by Barry McCaffrey are concerns that people legitimately raise about a number of drugs, but most conspicuously alcohol. I mean, certainly alcohol is much more strongly associated with sexual assaults and other kinds of regrettable sexual behavior than ecstasy or any illegal drug is.
But that's because more people drink.
Well, it's not. Not just because of that. If you look at the actual incidence among users of these kinds of problems, alcohol is much more likely to be associated with that sort of problem. The vast majority of people who use illegal drugs do not become heavy users, do not become addicts. It does not disrupt their lives. And in fact, I would argue, it enhances their lives. And I think the reason that people find it easy to accept what the government says is that when you have prohibition, the most visible users are the ones who are most antisocial, most screwed up. They're the ones who come to the attention of the police, of the prosecutors, of the judges, of the social workers, of the psychiatrists. I have a brother who says, you know, you wrote this book about well-adjusted drug users, and I accept that that's possible, but I'm telling you, the majority of people I see who are drug users, they're completely screwed up. Well, of course, he's a psychiatrist. Those are the people he sees. I think that people who present themselves as experts on drug use because they come into contact with all of these addicts have a very skewed perspective because they're seeing a biased sample. The people who are well-adjusted and responsible users are invisible.
Okay, well, let's hear from someone on the other side who actually probably sees the people having trouble. Ron Brooks is president of the National Narcotics Officers Association, and he joins us from New Orleans. So you've heard what Jacob Sullum says. I assume you strongly disagree.
You know, I do strongly disagree, and I think, you know, first of all, the alcohol argument is a great argument. The fact is, you know, crime went down dramatically during Prohibition. I mean, we saw drugs or alcohol sales crimes go up, but the domestic violence, the highway accidents, the workplace accidents, the violence in the bar rooms, you know, the ability of people to take care of their families, that went down. And alcohol use dropped dramatically, and in fact, we didn't reach the same per capita level of alcohol consumption until the 1960s. I mean, Prohibition
was a
in
good
some
thing?
regards.
How come we got rid of it by public acclaim?
Well, I would correct a couple of things.
Because people like to drink, but we also have to remember that, you know, people can drink socially. Nobody uses crack socially or heroin socially. I mean, those are drugs that are taken to get high, to be intoxicated. You know, people don't necessarily drink a glass of wine or one martini or one beer to be high, but people use crack or PCP or heroin or others for the sole reason of being high.
First of all, murder rates went up during Prohibition. It's not true that the violence declined, and it was fed by the Prohibition law.
60% of the kids that don't use pot say, hey, I don't use pot because it's illegal. I mean, clearly, legal prohibitions, you know, keep availability down, they keep price up, they keep the antisocial stigma message alive, and our abstinence-based policy in America has reduced in dramatically declining drug use. 1979 till today's date, we've reduced illegal drug use in this country 50%. We have saved lives. We have kept kids in school.
Ron, what about the argument that making it illegal causes the crime? That the drug dealers arm themselves and form gangs because they can't rely on the police because they're illegal?
Well, you know, there certainly is some of that, but let me tell you that there's a lot more drugs. If you look at Bureau of Justice statistics and NIJ stats, there are a lot more crimes associated with people that are high on drugs, lose their inhibitions, violent crime associated with it. You know, clearly, you know, domestic violence, violence against children, workplace accidents, highway deaths.
Jacob Sullum, I give you the last word.
Well, it's
now in this.
We hear you, Ron.
The association with violence is much stronger in the case of alcohol. We do not, therefore, conclude that we should ban alcohol. We tried that; it did not work out well.
That is patently false.
We repealed Prohibition, and the point is that the same distinctions we apply to alcohol can and should be applied to illegal drugs. You cannot simply assume that all use is abuse without further evidence.
Thank you, Jacob Sullum and
84% of all
Brooks.
family violence associated with
Thank you very much.
Crack.
Hang on. Coming up, the scare of the moment. Used to be crack babies. Now it's cold medicine. When we return.